what has been set asunder.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Unable to clarify the mire of false beginnings. We are what we force ourselves to be, not what we crawl from. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. And I'm honored to have as guest with me and co-host Cathy Dunson. Cathy, are you there, sister?
I'm here. Good evening, everybody.
Excellent. And we have as special guest, Brother Charles Holler. Charles, are you there, brother?
I'm here. How y'all doing tonight?
Pretty good. Pretty good. And yourself?
Good. Real good.
Excellent. We were supposed to be joined by two of our other friends, but Jackie was unable to make it, and we're not quite sure what happened to Kenneth, but we'll keep an ear out for him, and maybe he'll join us later in the show. But I wanted to start initially, since we're talking about the lunacy, the insanity of scientism, and the whole postulation of the Darwinian heliocentric worldview and all that it entails, as well as the expansion, what I see as the next aspect of the great lie, the strong delusion, and that being that the ancient aliens are our creators, is how, just so many things when they occur, such as when 9/11 unfolded, and how, because that was the main catalyst for a lot of the people's awakening, myself included. But one of the things that I began to look into, which scientifically did not make any sense and which was immediately questionable to me, was the fact that never in the history of fire had any steel reinforced structure ever collapsed due to exposure to fire, or even over long durations. That the official story was that the steel had melted, and that the 110 stories of each of the World Trade Centers, that they just kind of, because of the weakened steel, they pancaked and collapsed one on top of the other, and then that resulted in all 110 stories collapsing and cascading in on one another, and free fall descending to their destruction in what was 11 seconds. And even the firefighters thereafter were questioning the whole physics of how such a thing could occur, especially because of airline jet fuel, which is similar to that of kerosene. And so many, when you really look into it and examine it with an open mind and with honest consideration, there's no way that the official story could stand. And even though they tried to contrive the different, as far as the groups that looked into and investigated the plausibility of the official story, and they tried to confirm with animations and different graphs and all these different engineers and architects and different people coming together and say, oh yeah, the official story, that's exactly how it happened. But yet they don't mention that more than 2 buildings went down on that day. And so how do you explain the other buildings going down when they were not hit by any kind of jet airliner, and there was no burning jet fuel that weakened their structure? And the reason I mention this is because of the recent, the I-85 bridge collapse. And even though I have not looked into this in any great detail, I've been tremendously busy over the last 2 days. And, those of you that are familiar with my work, that I live in Atlanta, and that a lot of my friends were directly affected by this bridge collapse, this interstate bridge collapse. Well, again, here's one of those things that the official story is that fire weakened this concrete structure, this steel reinforced concrete structure of all the rebar somehow weakened or melted or whatever the official story is, and caused this huge, perfectly square section of the interstate to collapse in on itself. And that just seems fishy to me. And so I was just wondering if anybody out there, if you have access to the chat room, if you've looked into it, investigated it in any way, or had, um, you know, heard anything about it. Because again, it's one of those things, just like with the levees in during Hurricane Katrina, and how they said that the hurricane, because the waves overtopping the dams, that somehow they weaken the integrity of these concrete steel reinforced levee systems in multiple places, and that's what caused the city of New Orleans to be somehow drowned and submerged. Yet, as I created the documentary, the When the Levees Break, the bombing of the lower Ninth Ward, when you go and study the eyewitness accounts and the investigate into the different individuals as to what they had heard, what they had seen, what they had felt, there were multiple witnesses of bombs going off, and that even at the bottom of these levee structures, that there were craters, these size of 20-foot craters going across these steel reinforced concrete levees. They weren't earthen um, levees as the official story tries to get us to buy into, because why would they create earthen uh, levees to protect the city when water from hurricanes, or the buildup of water, could damage the integrity and cause the entire city to drown? It's preposterous, and there's so much that came out in opposition to that whole official story. And so I'm wondering whether there's more to what occurred here in Atlanta. And so I don't know if either of you, even considered this, but I'd like to give you each a chance to, at least just make commentary. We'll go to you first, Charles.
Well, it's funny that you bring up the 911, because that's probably, for me also, was the beginning of my entering into, I guess, what they call the truther movement, which is a great name, by the way, I think, uh, because we want the truth.
Absolutely.
A few years before the 911 event, there was another explosion at the Twin Towers. It was in the basement. They had driven a van in there and it exploded. Right. And that was probably the first time where I questioned. I thought, wow, our government must really be good, because after that thing blew to smithereens, they were able to find a VIN number and track these guys down. And I thought, man, this government is really and that's how I thought, because I worked hard, and I just got my Today Show dose every morning, my hour a morning, 5 days a week, and I ate what they fed me. And then as you started getting into this, as we're going to talk a little bit later today about the NASA hoax, I never would have dreamed that there was anything like that, even until recently. And it's just amazing. So when you look at this bridge thing, and you have questions, well, you're probably right, Zen. It's something that probably needs to be looked at very closely.
Yeah, I'm now, and it's difficult for me to buy into the official story anymore, and especially when I consider how it is, again, that just like with 9/11, how there have been multiple entire structures, whole skyscrapers, the shell of the building completely consumed in fire, and yet the structure, the framework of the building remained completely intact, and that burned for a lot longer, like over the course of 24, 25 hours, over the duration of an entire night. And yet here with the 9/11 event, we had both of these towers collapse in less than 1 hour's time in being exposed to these supposedly hot fires and, having melted the steel and destroyed the integrity of this structure. And yet, again, there were more than 3 buildings. There were actually 4 buildings that came down: World Trade Center 6, 7, and 1 and 2. There were also bombs reported as having gone off. William Rodriguez and his eyewitness testimony, he speaks about bombs going off in the basement before the planes, the supposed planes, ever even hit the building. And so now and I'm not even saying that. Most certainly, I know for a fact that something happened there in Atlanta. It just seems fishy to me. Cathy?
Yes, I haven't heard very much about that. I'm looking at that now. I wanted to point out in relation to 9/11, there were new images released on March 30th by the FBI. And one that I have seen is very suspicious because it shows where the quote unquote plane struck on the outside and burned and collapsed there. And then the next ring in, not so much damage. And then the C ring, I guess it is called, where there is also burn. I'm going to suggest people look at where I have found information. It's Texas Shrugged Book is the name of the channel. And he's put out a couple of videos about it. And the latest one says, 9/11 case closed, exclamation, new images, the conspiracy nuts were right. So I've been meaning to look at that. I wanted to say my entrance into all of this was kind of late, but I had read Bill Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse. And I think his summation that the problem is secret societies. And it always seems to come back to that for me. I see this, the hidden hand. And even more now with Trump, a lot of us are wondering, what's going on. One thing I've noticed, and I think I mentioned this to you the other day, that there is open talk about the shadow government now in the mainstream. So, and also Trump has a picture in the Oval Office of Andrew Jackson. I don't know what that's telling us. Andrew Jackson tried to get rid of the central bank, or he did, I believe. My mind escapes on that.
Yeah, he did succeed.
He did. Okay.
For a while.
So,
yes.
So there's something being telegraphed there, or, maybe we're being strung along. I don't know. But I wanted to say, when I first started waking up, things that were pricking me to come alive to what's going on was the financial crisis in 2008. And with the movie The Big Short, I have watched that a few times, and it's kind of tracked along with my life things I did, because I bought a house in 2006 when the subprime mortgages are really big. I bought a house in, and then I had to short sell it. And it was all during this time, the machinations were going on Wall Street. And kind of looking back on that, I can see it. And I actually worked as a controller for a real estate company. So I was seeing all of that bubble build in Las Vegas at the time. And I still remember driving to work one day thinking, how are all these people buying this stuff? And thinking that this is going to blow. And this was when I was completely asleep. And I just, had these random thoughts come. Well, one thing that I started to do after 2008 and the financial collapse, and I had moved back to Oklahoma, I was starting to look into things. Actually, while I was still in Vegas, I started looking into Obama really deeply in the campaign finance fraud, because there was all this fraud. I was doing this with Pamela Geller, and I had different ways of building databases from reports on the FEC financial reports. And so I took that because it didn't matter what we found, and we found it. And the Obama campaign even responded to us, and it made national news, but it was all too late, and it didn't really matter what we found, even though it was all fraud and nothing ever happened. I had a bug to keep looking for stuff, keep investigating in my own way. So I would get government reports that were freely available online, and some I even paid for. And I found tens of billions of dollars that were plugged into fictitious accounts. And it looked like it was related to military and, things that were obvious fraudulent, amounts. I don't know if they were real amounts, if they were plugs or what. But this brings me to what just came out recently, just in the last couple of weeks. Over 2 decades, the Pentagon has lost $10 trillion. And that was a big story right before 9/11, but the day before 9/11, that Rumsfeld came out and said 2.3 trillion was lost. And where those records were in the Pentagon, that was all destroyed, right? So, this stuff, it just keeps coming. It's all fraudulent. It's all fake. It's all fake, phony, and false, as David X22 report says. I think it's false. Steel doesn't melt like that. Has anybody found a passport over there yet?
Yeah, right.
It's the ridiculousness of all this stuff. It's like Fox News. I had to turn them off every time they start to talk about the Boston bomber, because that one really gets under my craw. I just can't take the way they go after these people. And then they prop up the guy Phillips who killed Osama bin Laden. So it's story after story after story. And what's true? Well, we know Christ is true. That's about it. And we know the earth is flat. That's true. When I see these, on a daily basis, it builds it. And I think that's part of it. It's all the lies, the culmination of the lies is going to just, keep us just scattered in the way that they do that. So, yeah, it's probably false. And
well, it certainly seems fishy to me. Go ahead, Charles.
I was going to say, and of course, even without investigation, just wait and see what the fruit bears. And that usually will tell you what happened, because we see what 9/11 happened. They locked this nation down. I mean, right. Airlines, cameras on every corner. They really went crazy with the lockdown. And just watch the fruit, and we'll see.
Right.
False flag. We all know what a false flag used to be. The ships, they would have an English flag until they got up on their prey, and then they would switch it for a pirate's flag, and that's where the word false flag came into. So it's all bait and switch. Pardon?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I didn't know that was a very interesting background as far as story. But I've got something else I want to share with you as well before we go all into the as far as the NASA deceptions and its connections with the Darwinian heliocentric worldview and the whole reasons for all of that. And this has something to do with, you had mentioned, Charles, talking about the bombing of the World Trade Center back in 93, and how they had an FBI informant that was working with this particular sheik. And the only reason this came out, and that we learned that the FBI informant was actually encouraging and working with the bomber, trying to get him to blow up the World Trade Centers, was that the sheik himself felt like he was being double-crossed, and he was being set up by the FBI and encouraged to do this. And he didn't trust the government because they basically had told him it was just a drill, and that, the ordinances, the bomb making material, that all of this was fake, and that it was just, a practice exercise for him to go through. But lo and behold, when they actually, whatever it is, push the bomb or call the cell phone or whatever, it was live. And this is also one of the reasons why he didn't drive the van up against the actual pillar down in the basement of the World Trade Center, because the hope of the FBI and the powers that be that were after the World Trade Center and trying to bring it down for whatever reason, because it's been a target for a very long time, was that the bomb would destroy the infrastructure of the pillar and cause the building to collapse sideways and to fall and to collapse in that manner, that the weight it would cause the momentum to carry over and to bring down that building in that way. And so it's only because the sheik, himself, who's the one that was charged with the actual terrorism by the FBI. Well, it wasn't until the release of his tapes and his doing this for his own benefit that the public even found out that the FBI was involved in antagonizing him and also in supporting him with material, with the bombing material, and encouraging him to actually do the crime. And the reason I bring this up is because I don't know if you saw the show just recently, Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes. He did an expose on the Texas Garland, Texas shooting. These two terrorists that shot all these multiple individuals. Well, come to find out, and this was all released, that in investigating the individuals, the private investigators and the different, I guess it's the special prosecutor or whatever for Texas, in investigating the crime, they have now learned that the FBI was also involved in, just like with Muhammad Atta and 9/11 and all of that, Able Danger, that the FBI had foreknowledge of the crime and the terrorists, and they're practicing and preparing for this terrorist event, and that they were informants. They were FBI informants, and that there was an FBI agent working directly with them in the same way that they were working with the Sheik during the 93 World Trade Center bombings, that they were being given money, they were being given material items with which to perpetuate the terrorist attack, and that the FBI also, when the attacks were going down, there was an FBI agent in the car behind them that was following them and was monitoring them, and that allowed the attacks to go through. And
that was the Draw Muhammad contest, wasn't it, in Garland?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Pamela Geller too. Yeah. So okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, not cool, but
I know, but right. Of course.
But yeah, it's so in your face, and like the prosecutor or the investigator that was looking into this, he couldn't believe that the FBI agent was in the car behind them, and that when they got out to murder all these people and started shooting all these people, rather than get out and prevent the crime or to actually stop these people being murdered, he just drove right on by and just allowed them to continue killing people and slaughtering them in that way. And so it shows you how dirty certain aspects of our government are, and how at the upper levels they are supporting the terrorists, that they are training them, that they are arming them, that they are doing everything they can to allow these attacks to happen, to encourage them to happen, and that they are doing so as a pretext for, the same thing of cracking down against the boogeyman, of bringing legislation for more police state measures, of disintegrating civil liberties. I mean, it's the same modus operandi, but yet it's so in your face now that even 60 Minutes did this whole expose where they revealed this and brought it all forth, and yet there's no, like the people that the family members that lost loved ones that day, they should be completely outraged, as to, just like with the people, the family members that lost loved ones on 9/11, when they found out about Abel Danger and that Muhammad Atta and his other terrorist friends, that they were working and that they had been given passports and allowed to enter the country by certain aspects of the government, that the intelligence agencies, Abel Danger, they were monitoring them, and that they knew that they were working to try to bring forth these supposed attacks. I mean, it is insane. It shows you the duplicity of these different agencies, and how some of the agents, that they don't know, and that they are actually working to stop the terrorists, but yet at the higher level, um, the the agencies are actually supporting the terrorism and protecting them, and giving them leeway to actually succeed in um, in what they were doing and planning. All right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Before we leave this particular topic, I do want to share just a little bit from an article that I just pulled, picked up from the web about this. This individual writes, 60 Minutes whitewashes massive FBI failure in 2015 ISIS Texas terror attack. From what I read over the break, it says that they were mortally wounded before anybody was killed. So that's really good. At least that happened. But, just to give a little bit more insight into this, because it was just released just a few days ago, and I caught only a small portion of it. But again, I was blown away that here they were revealing that, the FBI knew and actually had worked with, had monitored one of the individuals for years, and that these guys were protected. But, who imagine if they weren't taken out by law enforcement immediately and were able to kill a bunch of people, because, again, that occurs. And this being the first actual ISIS attack, I mean, that sets precedence for, for the homegrown terror, because we know that it's going to come home to roost at some point. So I'll read a little bit of this, and then I'll get both of you to comment, and then we'll go into the other aspects of it. But again, I think this is very important. And if you look up on 60 Minutes, I believe this was released March 26th, and it's Anderson Cooper who was the correspondent. And on the 60-minute website, it says a terrorist attack in Texas by 2 U.S. citizens shows how hard it is to prevent such an attack, even when one of the terrorists is well known to the FBI. And, that's all propaganda, because they weren't trying to prevent the attack. They were encouraging it, and they did so in order to set the precedence that, terror is coming here, and everybody's got to give up their civil liberties, and everybody's got to allow more taxpayer money to go to creating more police state measures, and to arming more military style sheriffs and deputies, and put them under the federal arm of the FBI or whatever. I mean, it's crazy. Just like with the stripping of posse comitatus during the Hurricane Katrina, and how they were able to set the precedence of disarming Americans, going door to door and taking their weapons, and also forcing them from their homes. I mean, that was a trial run. We know with Rex 84 that, and the whole martial law set up here in America, that they've been trying to set the premise for this agenda for a very long time, and they were able to, with what happened in New Orleans, to practice and to actually have Blackwater on the streets roaming here in America. That, with posse comitatus, if you don't know what that is, it was a law that was on the books to prevent the military from being on the streets on domestic soil here in America against and used against American citizens. But, with that being basically dissolved, now again, you can have Blackwater on American streets, patrolling American cities and working against U.S. citizens. But, all right, just a little bit from this article, and then I'll get you guys to comment. It says 60 Minutes whitewashes massive FBI failure in 2015, ISIS Texas terror attack. And the excuse that they had, one word, complexities. That's the excuse invoked at the end of the 60 Minutes segment that aired Sunday evening to explain why the FBI failed to stop two ISIS-inspired terrorists in direct contact with two ISIS terror recruiters. The attackers rolled up in a car loaded with guns and ammunition to the Draw Muhammad cartoon contest event in Garland, Texas on May 3rd, 2015. What 60 Minutes, fronted by Anderson Cooper and echoed in an interview with Sean Seamus Hughes of George Washington University's program of extremism, explains is that the FBI sources are stretched so thin that there's no possible way to devote resources to every single potential threat. I'll grant that the FBI counterterrorism resources are overloaded way beyond capacity, but that's an appropriate and unwarranted discussion for policymakers to address. Also, in the real world of law enforcement, there are indeed many complexities during a case that lead to some very important investigative clues being missed, especially when FBI resources are overstretched. But these complexities don't even remotely begin to explain the massive failure by the FBI in this particular case. Like a blanket that's too short that you can never turn the right way to cover everything, invoking complexities to explain the FBI failure in the attempted Garland attack doesn't cover the very issues raised by 60 Minutes in their own report. So here's the real clarity in the story. At the time of the Garland attack, as the two terrorists, Elton Simpson and Nadir Sufi, were traveling in their car loaded with guns and ammo, they were being closely tailed by an undercover FBI agent. Not an informant, but an actual FBI agent who they had previously been in contact with on social media. The undercover agent even snapped pictures of the attack site just seconds before Simpson and Sufi jumped out of their car with guns blazing. 60 Minutes helpfully provides the undercover FBI agents pictures taken seconds before the attack, showing two individuals, including a police officer, who were shot at by the pair. And they provide a helpful graphic of how close the undercover FBI agent was tailing Simpson and Sufi. And you see on the actual documentary, you see all of these graphic depictions. I mean, they were right on their butt. They knew exactly what was happening, and they did nothing to prevent it. They just allowed it to go down. And yet, according to a statement provided by 60 Minutes, the FBI claims they had no advanced knowledge of the attack. Yeah, sure. We wanted to ask the FBI those same questions, but the Bureau would not agree to an interview. All the FBI would give us was this email statement. It reads, there was no advanced knowledge of a plot to attack the cartoon drawing contest in Garland, Texas. And yet, again, as 60 Minutes proves, they were following right behind these guys, had been involved in over several years a relationship with one of them, had encouraged them to do it, and supported them in different ways to actually succeed in being able to kill American citizens. It's like the whole Northwoods, that whole document to allow terrorist attacks to unfold here on American soil that was put out by the Joint Chiefs of Staff as a pretext to blame Cuba for, supporting such terrorism. Just a little bit more here. The information about the undercover FBI agent being at the scene was already known before the 60 Minutes broadcast. given some details were included in court documents for a related terrorism case in Ohio this past August. I noted that they're here at PJ Media while mentioning the point dozen known wolf terror cases during the Obama administration, but the FBI uncover agent being at the Garland attack site was more than coincidence. In fact, the FBI agent had been in contact with Simpson on social media in the 3 weeks prior to the attack, and at one point had even told Simpson to tear up Texas, as the attorney in the Ohio case explained to 60 Minutes. Just a little bit more because I want both of you to comment before we go to break here. Anderson Cooper, after the trial, you discovered that the government knew a lot more about the Garland attack than they had let on. Maynard, that's right. Yeah. After the trial, we found out that they had an undercover agent who had been texting with Simpson less than 3 weeks before the attack and told him to tear up Texas, which to me was an encouragement to Simpson. The man he's talking about was a special agent of the FBI working undercover posing as an Islamic radical. The government sent attorney Dan Maynard 60 pages of declassified encrypted messages between the agent and Elton Simpson and argued tear up Texas was not an incitement. But Simpson's response was incriminating, referring to the attack against cartoonists at the French magazine Charlie Hebdo. Bro, you don't have to say that, he wrote. You know what happened in Paris. So that goes without saying, no need to be direct. Again, this information that was reported months ago. Last thing I'm going to read, and then we'll go to you. Days before an ISIS sympathizer attacked a cartoon contest in Garland, Texas, he received a text from an undercover FBI agent. Tear up Texas, the agent messaged Elton Simpson days before he opened fire at the Draw Muhammad event, according to an affidavit filed in federal court on Thursday. All right, I'm going to just stop with this last paragraph here, and then we'll move on. The FBI isn't too interested in answering questions about the undercover agent's encrypted communications with the would-be Garland killer, Elton Simpson, as Daily Beast reporter Heidi Zaditsky found out when she asked them directly. Press officers for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Ohio, the Cleveland FBI office, and the Department of Justice declined to comment beyond the affidavit. FBI spokeswoman Carol Craddy hung up on the Daily Beast after being asked about the tear up Texas text. Complexities. But as the late Billy Mays would say, but wait, there's more. Unmentioned in the 60 Minutes report, the FBI sent a bulletin to Garland police hours before the event, warning that Simpson, whom the Justice Department had already unsuccessfully prosecuted previously for his role in a terror cell, might be on his way to the Garland event, even including his photo and his license plate number. How convenient. All right, let's go to Charles, and then we'll go to Cathy thereafter.
Well, it's just appalling. I mean, you have trouble finding words to even comment on something like this. I mean, the whole idea, of law enforcement is to protect.
Right.
It's just unbelievable that well, and when you look around at our nation, what's happening to the police department, so you wonder if this isn't just another one of those false flag events, which it wasn't false, of course, but false flag doesn't actually mean that it didn't happen. It
Right.
just means that the reasoning for it is undercover. So when you
Right.
see all the police departments, I mean, if you look at a local police department these days, I mean, they've got full body army, they've got tank type vehicles. I mean, it's almost like each police department has become its own little military.
Right.
So anyway, that's really, I just don't know what to say. I hope that it says the dark comprehended the light not. I hope the light being shined on these FBI agents, that something will happen. And we have seen justice happen before with Waco, and very limited, but because they like to protect their own, there's no doubt about it. So as you
Yes,
can see
most
with
certainly.
the email that the FBI sent that they had no knowledge. Well, it's obvious they did have knowledge.
Right, most certainly. One last comment, and then we'll go to Cathy. Also, I know it's difficult, again, especially for people that trust their doctors, trust their government, and that, believe in the system and believe that it works in order to preserve our freedoms and to enable us to live the kind of lives, because we still do. We live very blessed lives. But in my opinion, you have to understand who the enemies are and what they are trying to do. It's like, for instance, the whole thing with the cancer and how so many people, because just recently one of my friends also told me that a lot of people are being told and reported to have cancer when they do not.
Oh, yeah.
And that they're being lied. Yeah, that they're being lied to, and that when they undergo the chemotherapy and the radiation, that they are destroying their immunity, and that's what actually causes more of the cancer to set up in their bodies and leads to their early deaths. And so, most certainly, people, if you get a diagnosis of cancer, get 2-3 opinions, because the doctors are lying just in order to be able to subject people to the expensive treatment of having to go through the whole cancer protocol as they have set it up. Cathy?
Another kind of related, an article yesterday that I saw about vaccination and autism rates, that 1 in 2 are projected to have autism by 2025. And then a friend, Laurel Austin, who's going to join us in a couple of weeks and talk about this subject, she said it's projected to 2020. So how does anybody conceive that we will take care of that kind of disabled population? I wanted to add on this story about Texas that Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer were putting that on. So I was watching that pretty closely. And that was the first major claimed ISIS attack in America. And they had speaker Geert Wilders, who's a Dutch freedom fighter, and he's often under attack. So she wondered, let me read an article from her about what was going on. They knew about the attack, yet they didn't have a team there in case the jihadis started shooting. It's hard to escape the conclusion that the Obama FBI wanted me and the other speakers at the event dead. Dutch freedom fighter Geert Wilders was the keynote speaker. He has been living with armed guards for years for supposedly insulting Islam. My colleague Robert Spencer, co-organizer of the event, has received numerous death threats from Muslims. Cartoon contest winner Bosch Foston Drew Muhammad. Did Obama's pro-Islam FBI want us all dead? What other conclusion can be reached? I've been trying to get my mind around this thing. She just wrote this a few days ago. What was Obama trying to do? Teach Americans a lesson? Enforce the edict that he enunciated in the wake of the Benghazi jihadi slaughter, that the future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam? If people had died, this is the thing to think of, at our Garland event, the murders would have been a blood-chilling effect on the freedom of speech in America. That, in my view, appears to have been what the Obama administration wanted. For all this to come out right now, it is really something, and it's not going to get the kind of attention, that everything else does when it happens, and it's a quote-unquote false flag.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you read that and that you located that, because, for those people that could have ended up dead and dying, and the families that would have been affected, because they lose their loved ones. I mean, what is the government coming to? Just to pay back some people for doing and expressing freedom of speech and
And now they're talking about taking people's laptops away at security at airports, because that's the new way that they're going to get things through. It's like taking away water bottles, taking away little bottles of this or that. Everything that's happened since 9/11 has not been anything that has safeguarded our freedoms. It has I don't fly anymore. I won't fly. I don't want to fly unless I fly to the conference. But I mean, it's something I used to love to do, but they've completely stripped that. You know, there are so many. Yeah, I understand. Yes, we are a free country, but I don't feel like we're a free country anymore. I felt like we were free in the 70s, in the 80s. I felt like we were free. I don't feel free now. The regulations are insurmountable, and you can't go through a day without breaking multiple crimes you are not even aware of. The surveillance on us is insane, and people
Right.
just it's the frog boiling in a pot. We just keep accepting it, and I'll do the right thing, whatever that is that we don't know. You know, it drives me crazy. I was driving the other day thinking this feels more like what they might have thought. You know, my question was in my mind, how did they feel before the wall went up in East Germany? You know, how did they feel before these
Right.
things happened? How did they feel in Nazi Germany? You know, as they were coming into the war, we're blind to so much. And we say it's okay. You know, I get comments all the time. Go to another country, then. You know, no, we're killing. Last month we killed 1,300 civilians in Syria. U.S. and allies did. What is this? This is insane. So, you know, we need to be awake and questioning.
Yeah, absolutely. And wait till they start using, because they're already using drones here in America. They're
Yes.
just not killing people.
But
But wait
that's
till they start,
two cities are
targeting
going to do.
people.
They are militarized drones. That's what they call them. Two
Uh,
cities have put those in use now.
yeah, well, I'm sure that there's way more than we even
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, I mean that might be what is released officially in the papers, but I'm sure they're already using
Oh,
surveillance drones, and they're spying on us through our TVs. It just came out, you know, through our laptops. This is the reason why I refuse to have a webcam. And
look
people,
at this.
people ask me all the time about that, and I'm not going to help them.
I just pulled up Zero Hedge and it says Apple censors U.S. drone strike tracking app.
Yeah,
And I see a Kenneth Beer sighting on Skype. So pull him
yeah,
in during the
yeah.
break.
We'll bring them in on the break.
Okay. He can
But
take the
yeah,
rest of the show.
right. Well, we're gonna go into the other subjects, so he's actually perfect timing, you know,
Yes.
for the second segment. But and so again, the whole point of what we brought up is for people to open your minds to think. Don't believe what we're being told, because there's always an underlying something going on behind the story. And even like with what occurred here in Atlanta with the I-85 bridge collapse, I don't believe the official story. Just like with the buildings, you know, they saying that jet fuel is what caused the integrity to collapse, all that. That's all just, you know, a crock of BS. And so we have to question everything, and we have to ask why it is that they are presenting a story a certain way. And this also occurs with like, it's my opinion that, you know, all these oil pipelines that keep getting destroyed and blasted, I think those are terrorist attacks too, and that some of the fires that are set and that are causing, you know, large acreage and whole neighborhoods to be destroyed, some of that also is terrorist event. And you know, I'm not saying that all of it is, but we have to really wake up to what's going on in the world, because there's the governments and the press, they're supporting the terrorists. They're not telling us what's up, because they're keeping all of it under wraps in order for it to just get out of hand. And until people are dying on the streets, I mean, then are you finally going to understand that something is up and that there's more to the story of what's going on and what we are being told? I mean, again, my people are killed for lack of knowledge.
Amen.
And
Amen.
that, how so very true. And then the whole thing with you know, with vaccines, um People are involved in their own destruction. They are killing their own children, destroying the minds, the bodies, the health of their own children. And I try to warn, even my cousin just recently had a baby, and I tried to warn him and to get him and his family to do some investigation. And he's awakened. He knows about the New World Order, and yet, he doesn't want to buck the system, and so he's going to allow his daughter to be vaccinated. And I told him, I just pray that no repercussions come of it down the line.
Just before we go to
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
I was gonna say, just before we go to break, my youngest daughter, about 22 years ago, she was in kindergarten, and one of her classmates was abducted by one of the parents. And it was one of those situations that got all hyped up. FBI got involved, that type of thing. Just within a day or so, the little girl was back. And the little girl has, I'm not going to mention her name, but she has a very uniquely identifiable name. It's not like Brenda Williams. I mean, it's very uniquely identifiable. When the Sandy Hook shooting happened, her picture is one of the pictures of one of the victims that was broadcast as a victim from Sandy Hook. And they actually used an old FBI picture without even changing the name. So once again, we do need to pay attention to what's being told around us and then what the outcome eventually is going to be.
Yeah, especially if, like, the Sandy Hook people are involved with the Boston bombing stuff and later end up being killed in another shooting. I mean, it's just crazy. It's crazy. All right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour, and we are joined now with by Kenneth Beer, and so we're looking forward to actually going into the topic of the lunacy of Scientism. Kenneth, are you there, brother?
Hey, Brother Zen, good to hear you. Apologize for that mix-up. I thought it was 8 to 10. I apologize.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah, that's the other show, but it's all good. We're glad to have you on for this second hour. And Brother Charles is with us, and Sister Cathy is here. And so I'm going to let Cathy set the premise for this second hour. She said that she's got a number of different issues, articles, topics that Cathy, can you kind of launch us into it?
Yeah, the word that came to my mind first thing today, thinking about this topic, NASA scientism as a religion and an idol, is ludicrous. And I looked up that movie clip from Spaceballs where they go to ludicrous speed. And I took a look at that. Anyway, and maybe that came off of watching Joe Rogan and Lawrence Krauss. They were lambasting flat Earth and conspiracy theories. And I wanted to be sure to mention Lawrence Krauss, who's one of the darlings of science, along with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, the non-science guy. Lawrence Krauss said, every atom in your body came from a star that exploded, and the atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand. It really is the most poetic thing I know about physics. You are all stardust. You couldn't be here if stars hadn't exploded because the elements, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron, all the things that matter for evolution and for life, weren't created at the beginning of time. They were created in the nuclear furnaces of stars. And the only way for them to get into your body is if those stars were kind enough to explode. So forget Jesus. The stars died so that you could be here today. So these are the people who are taken seriously in this world. And you mentioned the systems of this world, Zen, earlier, how people want to think that the systems, the government system, their education system, that these things are okay. Well, these systems are not. These are Satan's systems, and we participate in them. And I think if we understand them and expose the falsity of them, and people like Lawrence Krauss, who teaches about evolution and mocks us who believe in creation and believe now that the earth is exactly the way God created it. These are the people that we are not aligning with. And many in Christianity, like Sandeo, who recently on a show with Hagman, and I never like to bring up names, but he was on a show and he said he had pictures of the curvature of the earth. And it was the image segment of his show with Hagman. And he didn't show an image of what he was claiming to have. And so this is, what we are seeing as more and more people are waking up to this. It is not going the other direction. It is going into the direction of a consciousness shift toward what I believe is something that God is doing, that is waking us up to the falsity of Satan's system that was put in place over the last 500 years, most recently in the last 60 with NASA and the lies that they tell that get grander and grander by the day. And the people of this false system, the Lawrence Krauss, the Neil deGrasse Tyson, who are lying to us, these are the priests of this quote unquote science system that is something that I will not align with. But many in Christianity do. They want to be okay with science. And I just think that that's an idol. So that's what I'll help start off with.
Excellent. Very well said. And yes, you're absolutely correct that Satan, there's a reason why all these counterfeit systems have been put into place. And again, all of that is leading up to the unveiling of the Antichrist as the alien God, the false counterfeit savior Messiah. Just recently, I was working on one of Dr. Joy's books. For those of you that are her listeners and followers, know that her books are not currently available because Tape Publishing, and I'll also announce this with my own. My books, Sons of God and Skyfall, are recently have gone up to several $100s each. Don't buy them. I made them freely available in the Facebook group Zen Garcia Eyes Wide Open. Just go there. You can download them for free. People are trying to make money off of the Tate publishers and the Tate authors because of the bankruptcy of Tate. And don't order any of Tate's books or their PDF books, because they won't send them to you, and they're not even answering or replying to emails or inquiries as to where the books are. And they've collapsed, they bankrupt, and they are not longer honoring their contract with some of us authors. And luckily only 2 of my books are through them, but don't purchase them for hundreds of dollars. I do have still some hard copies if y'all are interested, and I'll sell them at regular prices. But don't support those that are, trying to just take your money from you, and they're not even, supporting the authors anyways. But anyways.
And also, real quick, the website that we now have is sacredwordpublishing.net or .com, and you can buy all of Zen's books there and much more, sacred textbooks and flat earth books.
Right, and we're publishing all of Dr. Joy's books, but just recently I released and will be releasing shortly her first book, which has been out of print. Her second book, actually, is called The Antichrist, the Cloned Image of Jesus Christ. And in it, she speculates and talks about how the Antichrist will look like Christ and will be a counterfeit like Christ, and that he will be an alien God, just like the ancient aliens is putting forth. And this is the whole premise for the whole deception, the Darwinian heliocentric deception, the whole cosmology that puts the sun as the preeminent, the center of the so-called solar system. And do you want to know the truth? Do you want to understand God's cosmology and the biblical secrets that are all tied and connected to this? Because when you do, you come to the understanding that directly above Polaris, as the center of the vaulted dome, as the point where all of the directions come together, the sides of the north, as spoken about by Lucifer in Isaiah chapter 14, that is where the Mount of the Congregation is located. I prove this in my 10th book, The Firmament, Vaulted Dome of the Earth. And that's where God is, and he is watching over us. He's narrowly focused on us as his bride and as the prodigal child. And all of those other worlds that NASA tries to get you to believe in, the discover, another Earth-like planet, another sun-like solar system, all of that is malarkey. There is only one sun, that which revolves in circuit above us, and there are no other Earth-like planets out there. We are it. We are specially made in the image of God, and the Earth was established to be a special place of habitation for us. Kenneth, let's go to you.
Just a big amen to what you said there, brothers. And the concept apple of his eye is used a lot in the Psalms, especially those written by King David. And I remember when I first came to know the Lord, and I was so excited because we were special and there was something different about us. And then I started to listen to all these what do you want to call them, compromised theologians who started to embrace all this heliocentrism and the cosmology as the astrophysicists preach it. And at the time I didn't understand scientism. This goes back maybe 30 years. And I can tell you that what it did to me as a new believer was it just crushed me. It took all of that excitement and all of that reality that I was seeing in God's word, and it just dumped water on it. And the scriptures tell us, quench not the Holy Spirit. And so the Holy Spirit starts to move in the life of a believer, and then you have this bucket brigade, from even seminaries dumping water on the fire of the Holy Spirit in the life of a new believer. So this is a ploy. It's from Satan, and I love how the Lord works. I came home from the plant on Friday, and we have Word FM on in the basement for the dogs, and it's our local Christian station. And they have a talk show on in the afternoon, and they're talking about a book published by a professor at MIT, Monopolizing Knowledge. And let me see if I can zoom in on this to get the subtitle. I just called it up here. It's Monopolizing Knowledge by Ian Hutchison, and he is a professor of molecular science at MIT. And he gets into the entire scientism discussion. Here is a scientist at MIT who recognizes what's going on. So, it's so dangerous because people have just converted the priests from the priests of the past to the scientists with their white, instead of their flowing gowns, now they got their white lab coats and clipboards on. And they turn to these people as the source of all knowledge, the source of all reason. And that's, quite frankly, not what science is. So it's refreshing to get together with people like you. It's refreshing to know that I'm not the only one out there that sees what's going on. And it is so dangerous to the faith. And we just have to recognize that God's word's true. And that whole Stardust thing that Sister Cathy mentioned, it can't even be, because God's word tells us that God created the heavens and the earth, and then like 15, 16 verses later, he did the sun and the moon and the stars. So, and then he goes on in Genesis 2, like we talked about last time we were together, and he created man from the dust of the earth. So we weren't made from stardust. We were made from the dust of the earth. Big difference.
Yeah, there's a lot that when you study God's words and you're brought to this revelation and you embrace it as paradigm, that will reveal itself. I mean, just like with the Genesis, the timeline for creation, it's the earth that is reformed. Then the firmament is established. And then the waters, the dry land is divided from the waters. And then the luminaries are placed into the firmament, which is fitted to the circle of the earth, the inscribed circle of the earth. And so how does that, and how, if the earth is revolving and orbiting the sun, how does any of that work? It doesn't. Charles?
Well, I just don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. It's this world. I think that the more the deception comes at us, the clearer it's going to be. I think that's why there's a whole movement for this flat Earth thing right now, because I believe it's preparing God's people for a great deception that's about to come. Whether that's going to be aliens landing or somebody coming out of a hollow Earth or whatever it's going to be, when it comes, we're all going to recognize it and we're going to know it because we've been watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is part of the strong delusion. And this is what the whole ancient aliens, what they're trying to set up, the whole premise that angels, they say there are no angels and that angels are only extraterrestrials, and that for whatever reason, these ancient aliens, they left long ago, but that they're coming again at the end of days to save us from ourselves. And that's the whole premise that they're putting forth. And so many people that don't have a love of the truth, that don't know the truth of the scriptures and the inspired word of God, they're ripe. They are ready. They have been set up for this deception, and they are ready to bow down to these alien gods, to take whatever mark, to join whatever system, to engage in their religion, to unite with their ascended masters and their light brothers and sisters. And I mean, it is all coming down the line, and we know the elect is but a few, and it's because most people don't even read or study their Bible or understand the scriptures in a way that they can apply it in a meaningful way to their lives. And that's why, so many are led astray, wayward, and deceived. And for those that say that the flat earth and the firmament as topics are not important, look at how many people are led astray by scientism to believing that they evolved of monkeys and that they just randomly came about of circumstance because the earth happens to be at the right distant extent from the sun to have somehow propagated life and to evolve DNA, and that that we all came about and evolved from some single cell amoeba, and that it evolved to a more as far as a more developed life form, and that continued to migrate into other evolutionary forms, and that all of that is linked together to where now man evolved a monkey or some kind of ancestor that unites monkey and man. And if that's the truth, why do we still have monkeys with us in all of their own different forms and kinds and types and varieties? I mean, they can't explain that. And then throw the whole thing about giants into the mix, and boy, that just totally disrupts the whole evolutionary system. Kathy?
Well, there's one other quote I wanted to read from 1984 by George Orwell. That was a really prophetic book. He says, this is O'Brien. "What are the stars?" said O'Brien indifferently. "They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. We could reach them if we wanted to, or we could blot them out. The earth is the center of the universe. The sun and the stars go round it." Winston made another convulsive movement. This time he did not say anything. O'Brien continued as though answering a spoken objection. "For certain purposes, of course, that is not true. When we navigate the ocean or when we predict an eclipse, we often find it convenient to assume that the earth goes round the sun and that the stars are millions upon millions of kilometers away. But what of it? Do you suppose it is beyond us to produce a dual system of astronomy? The stars can be near or distant, according as we need them. Do you suppose our mathematicians are unequal to that? Have you forgotten doublethink? These things are what we are seeing in our world today, and we are blind to them for the large part. People are living their lives, they're forced into this rat race, and they're soon to find themselves being out of a job and obsolete with the automation that's coming. But that's by design as well, and they don't see that. They don't see the coming collapse in the economy. Right now, we are on the precipice of what happened in 2008, but only at a much greater impact.
Scale, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
scale.
Such a great impact that I believe it's going to literally cause money to cease to be used.
And it's biblical too. And so the Christians aren't looking for it. They don't expect it, which, why? And everybody else is, playing with their phones and, they're just caught up in their lives. But, I went through, and to me, we got to go out to lunch today. It's my mom's 80th birthday on
Happy
Monday.
birthday,
Mom.
Mom.
Yeah, I'll play this little clip for her. She won't want to hear anything else. But so I'm building some notes, and if anybody wants them, email me paralandra77@gmail.com. And to me, it was like ordering from a menu where I sit and I change my mind back and forth what I want to order. With looking for stuff about NASA, I could build a book. Maybe I should, and we could publish it, in like an hour. It doesn't take the ludicrous things. And this one I found right before we started. Well, and of course, you just start with NASA accidentally erased the tapes from the first moon landing. So, we take this company seriously, this agency. They've been robbing us blind for 60 plus years. Well, and then I find this one, and it's dated April 1st, and it's not a joke. NASA just unveiled plans for its moon orbiting spaceport, Deep Space Gateway. And then I look down at the bottom, it says, but the space agency is totally serious about getting started with the first launch in the series dubbed Exploration Mission 1, set to take place next year. We are ready to start putting pencils to paper and cutting hardware. What? I mean, Kenneth, you as your plant manager, you're in manufacturing, they're just going to start putting pencils to paper, but yet they're going to fly. They're going to launch next year.
Isn't going to happen that fast. It's funny. I mean, there are so many, what do you want to call it? Logistics involved in various steps and sequences. And I read that type of stuff and I just laugh. And people are starting to wise up to it with regard to the absurdity of the randomness that would be necessary. Like they use this term, the Goldilocks zone. Zen was talking about the fact that we're just the right distance away from the sun to support life. So we're in the Goldilocks zone, and we just have the right amount of gravity and the right amount of attractive forces between subatomic particles, and all these things just fit together exactly right so that we have life. And it's all one big chance. And then people start to realize that there's not enough, zeros in any sort of real number, and you can go to infinity with numbers, but then there gets to be a point where information content ceases to be relevant.
Well, and this article was in sciencealert.com. Now, shouldn't that be a legitimate site? And they're just pushing this propaganda. We're in a propagandized time, and that's why 1984 was really good to look at. I found an article, I sent this to you, Ken, I hope you got to see it, about the scientific method. Fewer than 1% of papers in scientific journals follow the scientific method. And he says, this is in Breitbart, he says, we also go through journals and rate how well they conform to the scientific method. I used to think that maybe 10% of papers in my field were maybe useful. Now it looks like maybe 0.1% follow the scientific method. People just don't do it. And, the scientific method, science, I get ridiculed because I don't care for science. That's not true at all. Science must be observable, measurable, repeatable. And if it's not that, it's junk.
Well, Brother Zen talked about, why believe in a flat earth. And I know a lot of people came to the flat earth conclusion after looking at the big NASA hoax with the moon landing. And I never gave it a second thought. I came into this whole movement because one day somebody presented the math to me about curvature. And I just took a minute to look at it and was like, wow, something is really, really wrong. And so the more I studied and the more I looked into it, then it took me to NASA, and who created this lie and who is NASA? And of course, they come from this group of Nazi from Germany, these Nazi scientists that were brought over here to prop up this. So if there was any other reason to look at flat Earth, it's to bring to the realization of what extent somebody's going to cause all of humanity to believe a lie, and why are they trying to believe that lie? And it's not just the curvature that makes it so obvious. It's the movement of the Earth. I mean, how can we be spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and moving around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour while the sun's moving through the galaxy at 650,000 miles an hour, and the whole galaxy's moving through the universe at 1.4 billion miles an hour? Are they crazy to think that we could believe that when we look into the sky and none of the constellations even move? I mean, they're the same as they were 5,000 years ago.
Let me add this one more because it's right in line with this, and I'll give it all away back to you guys. Another article, future geniuses may be suffocated by too much structured knowledge in education and science, warn scientists. And this was in a story in Science Daily. Let me read this. The third experiment used Lego bricks. Participants were asked to make an alien out of a box of bricks organized by color and shape, or in a scenario familiar to many parents, out of a box of unorganized bricks. Participants in the organized category were prohibited from dumping the bricks onto a table. The findings may have application for leaders of multidisciplinary teams, which tend to show inconsistent rates of innovation. So this is how they did it. And it ends, we suggest people put their ideas randomly on a whiteboard and then think about some of their connections. This was in Science Daily. So...
You know what happens with so much of this in terms of the theoretical sciences, they need more numbers, more time, greater distances. And they get to a point now where the universe, which is supposed to be, and I'm going to read the definition for universe here, and this is so crazy because now they have this term multiverse, but what a universe is all that is, derived from
one word.
Yeah, all that is, okay? In time and space. And so now they realize that they just cannot encompass everything that they're theorizing, so they come up with the term multiverse. And I'm not joking when I say this. You listen to these astrophysicists and these theoretical scientists, which in itself is a bit of an oxymoron, just that term theoretical science. And they say, imagine the bubbles in a mug of beer. This is the multiverse. Each bubble would be another universe. And you know, I laugh when I hear that stuff because it's like nonsense. Universe encompasses everything. So now all of a sudden we have more everything than everything. It's nonsense. And so when you look at these things rationally, just like that comment you said that maybe we're stifling the minds of the generation of scientists, it's
Hold on, brother. We'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. I wanted to give you a chance to finish up what you were saying before we went to break there, Brother Kenneth.
Yeah, so these scientists, if you want to call them that, are debating this whole concept of a multiverse because people are waking up and understanding some of these quote-unquote theories in astrophysics and cosmology just can't make sense with the defined physical parameters of this universe. So now they have this structure of a multiverse, and now they're saying, well, when you put all the other universes together with different physical properties and different parameters in terms of natural laws, then you have everything there is. So, okay, we don't have this possibility here, but there could be another universe somewhere else where it could be a possibility. And when you stop and you think about that, there's a word for that, and that word is nonsense. It just doesn't make sense. Now, there are physicists within the scientific community that are basically saying that. They're saying, wait a minute, this is crazy. If it can't be, it can't be. There are certain laws in logic, like the law of non-contradiction. A equals B, or A does not equal B. But A can't be both. Yet there are people out there that want it to be. And when you get into that type of dynamic, there's a fallacy in logic called a tautology, where you try to make something mean two things, and both things being opposite. And it's crazy because I'm seeing this in science now. And like you said, Sister Cathy, they're not following the scientific method. It has to be reproducible, has to be repeatable. if I say I can conjure up a little green man, if I take a can of green peas and put them in foil and bake them in my oven at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, I should be able to write that paper up, and then I should be able to publish that. And people all around the lab and other kitchens, around the world in other labs or kitchens, ought to be able to reproduce what I did. And that's essentially science. Yet these people that are calling themselves scientists and talking about cosmology and all these strange things can't reproduce it. They merely speculate. And then when they speculate, what they're speculating is illogical. So they come up with this crazy term called the multiverse. It's insane. And it's appalling to people that had to go through the discipline like I did.
They are reeling, and they are forcing to backpedal and to try to grasp at every straw they can to try to deter and to keep people from examining the truth of flat Earth and the firmament, because again, it is so easy to prove. All you have to do is go try to either measure, determine the rate at which the Earth is supposedly spinning and orbiting around the sun, and also test for curvature. Go and check and see if there is any measurable curvature. Those two very simple things that anybody can do and that anybody can confirm with laser tests or with seeing something beyond the supposed curvature that we're supposed to, not be able to see. I mean, just the fact that Joshua Nowicki took a photo of Chicago from 60 miles out, and we're not supposed to be able to do that. I mean, confirming flat Earth as truth is so very easy to do. And all it takes is honest research and a heart to honestly come to understanding on truth and the revelation of God's word. Because it is, again, very easy to do. There is no measurable curvature, no matter how many photographs Stan Deyo says he has, or how many people say that they can see curvature from a plane or whatever. There is no curvature. You can see monuments, islands, landscapes, city skylines, lighthouses. Yeah, you can see all these things way past what we are supposed to be able to see with regard to curvature, and there's supposed to be some, 8 inches per mile inversely squared divided by 12, and that gives you how much curvature there's supposed to be in every mile, and it's immediate. You don't see it after 35 miles. It's immediate. Every mile there is curvature, and it should be, as Rob showed in his video, one should have to look down over, and because the Earth should be receding from us in a curve, in an arc, but it does not. There is no curvature. The Earth, water, sea level, it's all flat. The water in itself, the properties of water, it will never, ever form or take a shape to where it has curvature. It will always settle in flat, in some kind of level, and it will, if there's a crack or if there's a runoff, it will leak out until it pulls together and collects to where it settles in a level. That's water does that. It does not form a ball, a sphere, a globe. There's no way that a globe can, even how much magical gravity you apply to it, it's not going to hold the world's oceans together in a big round ball.
And
It's just not going to happen.
71% of the Earth's surface is water.
Yeah, it's a lot of water.
Which is what makes it really easy to do a quick test. Is all you have to do is find a piece of water that's 5 or 6 miles to where you could, you've got a straight view. And
Right.
one person, gets in the water and gets his camera, the Nikon 900 or a good pair of binoculars or a telescope or whatever, but he gets in a bass boat and goes out 5 miles. Well, according to curvature at the 8 miles or 8 inches per square divided by 12, 5 miles means 16 feet. There's no way you should be able to see your buddy 5 miles away. He should be 16 feet below the curvature. And just about anybody ought to be able to go out to any good river that's got a straight way, a lot of bays and canals, So yeah, very easily able to check curvature. Besides the big things that we see, like the Statue of Liberty or the Chicago, So anyway, very easy to test curvature. And where is the curvature? It's not there.
Yeah, there is no curvature. And so immediately, no matter what you think about the shape of the Earth, it's not moving and there's no curvature to it, which totally destroys the whole Darwinian heliocentric worldview. Kenneth?
Yeah, they call it sea level for a good reason. It's level. And, back just amplifying what you were talking about in terms of observations. There are some very basic things. When we were kids, we all played with the periscope, and a periscope won't work on a curved surface. A periscope has to have a flat surface to look across. And a lighthouse, the same thing. You can't have the concept of a lighthouse. It would very quickly lose its efficacy as a navigational aid on a curved Earth. And then sundials. A sundial can't work on a curved Earth. And a gyroscope. I could just keep rattling off these things. So, folks, these are all very little things you can get and study and reason with. The Bible says, "Come, let us reason together." Amen. And nobody reasons anymore.
Yeah. It's so funny to me how so many people, like one of the friends that we all share, how he says he's a science guy. Yeah. I'm a science guy. I totally support, the whole scientific method of confirmable, as far as doing experiments that are repeatable, that can be checked and verified and determined by others. And yet, what kind of science is there when there is no curvature? You can't measure it. The Earth is not moving. You can't measure or detect that. And yet they want to deny or make up, some kind of theory or some kind of something. And yet, even though we know it's totally propaganda and it's a total lie, and yet, just like gravity, that it's become a science. It's become a law. And it's, even Neil deGrasse Tyson says they don't know what gravity is. Even though it supposedly magically can hold all the world's oceans to the Earth as a ball, and yet a butterfly or a stream of smoke or anything could just fly against this magical glue holding all the world's oceans together. I mean, it's so silly. It's just a lunacy, absurdity. And for people that buy into and believe in the ball Earth, I mean, really, we should be the ones making fun of you, because it is insane, the kind of mental gymnastics you have to do in order to still believe and buy into that indoctrination. It is sheer lunacy.
I think that we've been given such a steady diet of fantasy, and science and science fiction are really merged into one, as even William Shatner said, and that was in a recent video Rob Skiba did. For instance, things that we read and we take in and we believe this to be fact. They say this star in the constellation Pegasus, it's so close and so brilliant, 5 times brighter than our own sun, that on a clear night, it can easily be spotted by the naked eye. Guess how far away it is? Easily spotted by the naked eye. 129 light years. Mm-hmm. And I did the math on that with the converter online, and it's 758 trillion miles, which you can see with the naked eye.
Right.
And
Yeah. Sure.
and this, it's titled "Watch 4 Alien Worlds Orbit a Distant Star," and that says it's one of the first confirmed images of exoplanets orbiting another star. And that's in the Washington Post. This is the stuff that we are fed a steady diet of. Another, and this was recent, major space discovery, and this was huge. NASA made a pre-announcement of their announcement about the TRAPPIST-1 system that has 7 Earth-sized exoplanets, 3 in the habitable zone, that Goldilocks zone.
Ooh.
And this is to prepare our minds to get that in, and then we'll go to the movie and we'll see, either the beginning of it has the globe, it
Yes.
prepping us, and then all the movies are science. Those are the ones I like to go to, are science fiction. But then we have in our community, and this is what I love, they're actually trying to figure things out. And one of the best things, John the Morgile brought this out, that Venus and Mercury are on the inside of Earth, well, in the heliocentric model, orbiting the sun. So they would be on the day side of the Earth always. Well, just recently, Venus and Mars have both been reported at nighttime, dusk and night, and later into the night. I think one side it was like 10 p.m. at night, but Nemesis Maturity, a channel I follow that just drives me crazy, says moon and 3 planets grace the night sky, must see celestial event. And here they are, Mars and Venus, which are absolutely impossible to see at night because you'd be on the opposite side of the globe. So these are things that people in the flat Earth community are doing. They're actually critically thinking. They're using their brains.
Well, think about the phases,
Imagine that.
about the phases of the moon. If you're doing this this transit around the sun every 365 days, and then the moon is doing a transit around the Earth approximately every 30 days, you should see a change in the phases as you face one side of the sun versus the other, and the relative movement of that moon around the Earth. Yet the phases always follow the same sequence. These things just make sense. They're absolutely crazy. And I'm
Well, my
looking.
brother Stan talked earlier about the sides of the North, and I got to thinking about the Gleason map, which is probably the acceptable flat Earth map, and it's probably pretty close. I think, with the exception of Australia and a few things there. I'm waiting for someone to come out with a really more accurate one. But you take into mainstream media reports of the pregnant lady that left Taiwan going to L.A. And when you look at the globe map, I mean, it's a straight shot. You fly right over Hawaii, right into L.A. Why would they go all the way to Alaska? Because on a globe, it doesn't make any sense. It's like way shooting north out of their way and then back to L.A. Yet when you look at it on the Gleason map, it's a straight line. They were flying over Anchorage, Alaska. And when you look at some of these, I guess there's 6 different emergency landings that you can look at, and you can see that when China Airlines, that was them when they went from Taiwan to L.A. When Cathay Pacific went from Hong Kong to L.A., they also did an emergency landing in Alaska, which was, on the globe, it's way out of the way. Qatar went from Chicago to Doha. They landed in Moscow, and there were several other ones that landed in Moscow. For the sake of time, I won't do each one of them. But that map it's pretty close to being accurate. And why would they go all the way out of their way to land in this airport? When you say in Alaska, you think of the far, far wilderness. Well, when I looked up this airport is called the Crossroads to the World. It's the Ted Stevens Airport. It's the 6th largest airport in the world when it has to do with the cargo weight being landed there. The 2nd largest one in North America. It has 500 flights of 747s landing there per week. Busiest airport in the world. And so on the flat Earth map, you can see why. It's in the center of everything. And that's seems to be pretty no dunker to me.
Yeah, I've seen that guy that did those videos, and yeah, it only works on the with the circle of the Earth, and I mean, there's so many confirmations of this. Just like with that woman having the baby and landing in Alaska. I mean, so many things confirm all this. But we've got just about 7 minutes, 8 minutes remaining, and so I want to give each of you a chance to, as far as what do you want to say to the world? Those of them who think of us as lunatics, as crazy, for even looking at this. What do you want to say to them? We'll start with Cathy, and then we'll go to Kenneth and with Charles.
Well, I pretty much said it in the beginning, so I'll just give a few more of my crazy NASA things. Story from today. Announcement: NASA believes aliens may be living under Mars soil. And my favorite of the week is about the Analema Tower, which I think is somehow speaking to us, because we're the ones that have been looking at the Analema, which is the way the sun moves in a figure eight. And this is a new skyscraper to be hung from an orbiting asteroid. Every story you want to find out there is about this as, a true conceptual thing. The one story I found and was looking at most interesting was saying how this is just not something that's possible. But they did mention that the company that has put this concept out, they've received money from NASA. So this is just to get it exactly. And they did the conceptual ice space whatever to live in on Mars. So all this is to put it in the public conscience that they're going to do this. And this was in every major media and alternative media, this wandering skyscraper. And I also wanted to mention how we have bought these things, comets and meteors. Look that stuff up. It's not real. They've just put that out there. Remember Comet Elenin, extinction level event, Nibiru is near. I mean, we all went crazy about that stuff. So they just put that out for fear, and they put that out to prepare us for what is coming.
I have one comment really quick. Somebody had asked me just recently whether I believe that there's further land past the ice wall. And what I had brought up was that there was that Buddhist map that was recently discovered. I think in Hawaii, in a monastery or something, that it was brought back and they published it. And it actually shows land beyond what is the ice wall. What is interesting about that, because what is interesting about that is that the Vedic cosmology also talks about this, but it doesn't say that it speaks about the interdimensional beings, or like ascended beings or whatever, or the demigods as living there. So whether that's like physical and something that we can see or that we can access, I don't know. But it is interesting that map shows that. And if there is, because Admiral Byrd, he mentioned in the TV release that he did, that there was a land the size of North America beyond, somewhere down and around that area. And so if they are hiding land or hiding access to some other dimensional plane or something, it would make sense why they have, all of these United Nations or this international force protecting the boundaries of whatever it is that they're keeping us away from, whether it's the firmament or something beyond. I mean, it's a travesty that they are able to do this and that they are able to hide the truth from us as to whatever it is, because we have the right to know. But again, with the powers of principality, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. This why these kind of things are in place, and this is why we still don't know. Kenneth?
What I'm looking at right now, folks, is two official NASA images of the globe. And in one of them, North America takes up over half of the visible space of that circle, which you actually see when you view a globe. And then the other image, you see North America occupying less than a quarter. So which is it? And then Sister Cathy sent a video, and you can't see these in the little promo snippets. You have to watch the live feeds that people have archived. And they're filming, quote unquote, a spacewalk, and they show one scene, and you see this curvature of the supposed Earth. And then they flash to another scene, and the curvature is radically different. So somebody got their background imaging wrong on that blue screen. And then
right.
you have a theme going on. So like Sister Cathy mentioned, we see the globe at the beginning of all these movies and all this stuff. But then watch what you see in the movies. In the midst of a movie that has no purpose for this scene, you will see a panoramic view of the most perfectly flat horizon you could see. And it'll be in the middle of a movie. Like they'll flash this scene and you'll say, what did that have to do there? It's almost like they're laughing at us.
They are.
Yeah, most certainly.
And I'll you know what I do now? It's automatic, and it drives Terry crazy. I'll say, sure looks flat to me.
Right.
And I was
Hi, Terry.
I was actually at a movie with my sister, my mother, and Terry, and they had one of those scenes in there, and I'm in the theater, okay, and I said, sure looks flat to me, and elbows me really hard, and I'm like, they are mocking us, folks. They are mocking us. So just watch it while you're watching a movie. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Charles?
Well, and it's more and more obvious. The more movies that come out, the more that they want to point to space travel. And, of course, they're all hyped up on the whole Mars thing right now. I love the video that Jeranism put out where he zoomed into that island off the coast of Canada that shows the Mars.
Yeah, right. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So,
everybody's growing potatoes on Mars now. Wasn't that in the movie?
That's
Yeah,
right.
The Martian.
Yeah.
Right.
But I guess the whole thing boils down to, in my own personal experience, I was the major witness of a federal trial, and it was a David and Goliath situation. We had people testifying against us that were with DCI, it's called Department of Criminal Investigation, all the way to superintendent, who was the right hand to only the governor. And when all looked like it was lost, out of a 20 by 20 foot room, documents stopped to the ceiling, I found one sheet of paper that exposed a lie. And with that one lie exposed our court system, thank God still, everything else was moot. You're either a liar or you're not a liar. And when you see lie after lie after lie coming from NASA, what are we to expect?
Right. Yeah, because that's why I don't give them the benefit of the doubt anymore, and I don't buy into anything that they release. They have to prove something to me, which, they don't do that kind of thing. They don't prove anything. It's all conjecture. I mean, the whole fact that, they say they can't even get past the Van Allen radiation belts now, and supposedly during the Apollo missions, they did all this several times. I mean, that's the lunacy. That's the lunacy of all you people who buy into NASA, that believe we went to the moon, that believe we can go back, or that believe we're going to go to Mars. Mars is nothing but a luminary. It's not Earth-like. You can't land there.
Let me say real quick, during the making of this show, Zen did not write a book. So go check out our books for sale, Zen's books mostly, because he keeps writing them, sacredwordpublishing.net.
Thank you.
Earlier this week, you sent out